everyone. My name is Sakshi. I am currently a master's student at UCL. I am one of those young people that have sort of left the profession. I still volunteer and do random bits and bobs in it, but I have mostly left it. I think initially I had a different title on the program. I think it was something weird called Archaeology Under Siege, and it was one of those moments. But then I've decided to change it to Precedents, just this one word. And I think it's an important word, really. And that's where I'd like to take it. And that's kind of the premise my entire talk and presentation really stands on. And I'm going to state this here as a warning in advance that I'm going to be talking about a lot of politics and a lot of news articles and a lot of things that some people in the room might not agree with or might definitely agree with or might have strong feelings about. So just fair warning. So the definition of precedence is essentially, something, an action or a situation or a decision that has happened, and it basically sets the ground for something in the future to happen or to be done or decided. And it's just a trail of actions. And you can have a legal definition or just different things that can happen about it, right? And the reason why I chose this is because I want all of us to think about a little bit about this word. What is democracy? And for a lot of people, it's the usual three little clause, I guess, type of word, which is or phrase for the people, by the people, of the people. Or for a bunch of people, it's just little subtypes, right? Liberal democracy, bourgeois democracy, deliberative democracy. Or, you think of older people like Aristotle who say things like, when the free who are also poor and the majority and they govern. And that's what democracy means to them. Or you have, like a vague idea in your mind and you think of things like free press and civil liberties, or, like procedurally fair and free elections and all of these things. And, like, why does any of this really matter? And it's because most of the world right now, theoretically, and I mean theoretically, should be democratic, right? And that can be because of different reasons, because of colonization, because of domination, or just because of new ideas and willingness or whatever to co-opt this idea of democracy. But this is what Democracy Index of 2024 looks like. The red is definitely not democratic. Any shades of red are not democratic. The light blue means a flawed democracy. And I've outlined these countries, specific countries of UK, US, Israel, India, and Hungary, with a specific purpose in mind, right? Because they're all considered democracies, either full or flawed, right? So the UK is considered a full democracy, and the US, Israel, India, Hungary are considered flawed democracies. Now, India, interesting case, is a fascist government, and it's currently on the brink of a war with Pakistan. Israel is committing a genocide and has since the 8th of October 2023 and has arrest warrants out against the current Prime Minister Netanyahu. Hungary, the Article 7 has been invoked against them by the EU for not aligning with Article 2, which is the core values. And the core values are what? Democracy, right? And all of these things. And I mean, I think we can all understand what's going on with the US. Like, I think Trump's in the news at least 100 times in a day. Now, this is why, flawed democracies are important as well, because being a light blue is not necessarily a good thing. Now, this is another thing that I want everyone to draw their attention to, because this is the Academic Freedom Index, right? And this is a funky map. So if you're wondering, New Zealand and Australia are up at the top on the right-hand side. And again, red means academic freedom index is very low. But for reference, this is the UK. So in recent years, academic freedom index is declining. And does anyone want to take a guess when that sharp decline started happening? Just shout it in one word. Thank God. And that is absolutely correct. And you see how institutional autonomy has stayed the same. I want to keep your minds to that, because the word precedent, I'm going to come back to that with institutional autonomy and why that's all of this is relevant to archaeology. It will make sense, I promise. Now, the relevance of all of this is that you said, I've shown you a big map. What does it matter? Because only 6.6% of the world's population actually lives in a full democracy. 39.2% live in authoritarian regimes. That's a huge number. And all of these factors that it's judged on have all declined. And and the only factor that has increased, which is political culture. Why has that increased? Because all of those people are seeking populist alternatives because they are sick of democracies. They are sick of their governments not improving their lives. And what does populism and far right and all of these things mean, right? It means three core features of nativism, authoritarianism, and populism, and occasionally a little bit of Welsh chauvinism. And what do those things actually mean, right? So nativism is basically xenophobia and a bit of nationalism combined together. And it means that, outside groups and ideas are portrayed as threats to your nation. And then they target minorities on various bases, right? And then you have authoritarianism, so a lot of police saying we want that, and they spotlight the crimes by minorities to combine that with nativism. And you ignore the determinants, the social and economic determinants of those crimes anyway. And then populism, so you have the people, you have the elite, and the government is working for the people, but reality, they're not. They're just putting more money in the pockets of the elite. And yeah, and anyway, the reason why all of this ties to archaeology is because there's been surveys, all of these surveys that luckily for me, someone in the introduction introduced all of these things about the representation things in the numbers and surveys and things in archaeology. And all of that is fine. We know what the percentage of white people and non-white people in archaeology are. So I'm not really going to go into that. But the precedents part that I really want to talk about is these are very recent things that have happened in the UK. Sussex got fined about £500,000 because they had a policy that said they wouldn't tolerate transphobia. Implications that now on universities, they cannot have anything that basically any harassment, abuse, or bullying, that they cannot have any policies against that or take action against that unless it is illegal in law, which most of these things aren't really. The second one, Supreme Court ruling. Trans women are not women. How does this relate to, and West treating's thing about NHS to treat trans people in separate rooms? Has history ever shown that when you segregate groups, it turns out to be a good thing? And talking about archaeology or commercial, the health and safety executive mandates that you have separate toilets for men and women. Where do trans people fit? Third precedent. This has been since the Brexit years, the anti-immigration, anti-immigrant sentiment, and these are the race riots that broke. So that's the precedent that was set by the anti-immigrant sentiment that was fed by the government. And that is what ended up happening. The current and future implications, just very quickly. These are actual government manifestos, and this is how it directly relates to archaeology. It's because funding cuts are planned for archaeology, for planning. Institutions, any institution that plans to teach anything that's woke or leftist, which archaeology obviously fits into. Funding cuts or massive fines. Nationalism and historical narrative manipulation. So, in a discipline that was once a colonialist endeavor, agenda, whatever you want to call it, that's now gone miles to turn itself to try and make itself more diverse, representative, and still hasn't really achieved all that much, will now again be abused if all of this comes into power again, to create a very nationalist and patriotic curriculum, all of these things, right? Censorship, culture wars, academic freedom. I mean, I've already said all of that, but yeah. Archaeologists will again be put in that place to decide what kind of a political stance they want to take. And I mean, because of Brexit, already a lot of funding has been lost. And yeah, I mean, if you want actual, and obviously transgender ideology will be banned entirely. And obviously because it's an ideology, and that's obviously already problematic enough. And any DEI rules and regulations will be banned. And also, actually, this was the more interesting thing, which was that hiring and firing will be made easier. And that's where I will stop.